Good evening. Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation. I'm Chancellor Ann Ponder at UNC Asheville, and we are joined here by trustees, former trustees, educators, future educators, and people who want to hear about the world of education. I had the pleasure of talking with Dr. Zhao earlier this evening, and I've talked with some of the students who have heard his earlier presentations on campus, and I want you to know that you are in for a very special evening. This evening is one of the typically UNC Asheville and Asheville partnerships because there are several UNC Asheville organizations and community groups, and I want to thank them all for what they have done to bring Dr. Zhao to our community and to make this presentation possible. The UNC Asheville organizations include the Office of Cultural Events and Special Programs, the Center for Diversity Education, the University School Teacher Education Partnership called USTEP, the Division of Student Affairs, the Division of Academic Affairs, the Office of University Programs, the Center for Teaching and Learning, the Asheville Graduate Center, Masters of Liberal Arts Program, and our Teaching Fellows Program. Joining with us are the following community groups: the Western Regional Education Service Alliance, known as RESA, the Asheville City Schools, and the Buncombe County Schools. Our speaker will respond to a few questions at the end of his presentation, and I'll be back up to help facilitate that. And some of the teaching fellows will bring microphones to you in the audience for your questions at that time. But now, to introduce our speaker for this evening, it is my pleasure to introduce Donna Lanahan. She's director of the Graduation Initiative at Buncombe County Schools and the Eblin Center for Social Enterprise. Dr. Lanahan is one of our own teaching fellows. She received a BA degree from UNC Asheville with a major in literature and language, a minor in history, and with her teaching licensure for grades 6 through 12. Donna is a member of the Governor's Teaching Advisory Committee and is part of the Buncombe County Schools leadership team. Please welcome to the podium, Donna Lanahan.
It is my pleasure tonight to welcome a very distinguished guest to the stage at UNCA. In his publications and presentations, Dr. Zhao asks us to consider some very provocative questions. What knowledge is of most worth? What's worth teaching? Are we fixing the wrong things? Does the U.S. want what China wants to throw away? And of course, are we catching up or leading the way? For those of us who have made education our life's work, these are questions that matter to us every day because they matter most to our students and their future. You may find, as I do, that Dr. Zhao's book is both affirming and a bit unsettling. It inspires both hope and concern. For example, his book does affirm those of us who are wary of standardization and testing as a measure for success for our students, and he offers us alternatives to reconsider the purpose of education. He reminds us of what we do well and what we all feel to be true, that education is really about helping each and every child realize his or her potential. At the same time, there is an urgency to recognize that we may be taking the wrong path at the crossroads, that some, as he says, have misjudged what really counts as educational excellence. When I was a student here at UNCA over 15 years ago, there was no race to the top, no child left behind, AYP, investing in innovation, nor was there much talk about 21st century skills, the Common Core, national standards, at least that I was aware of, and I did pay attention. But these phrases now dominate the education landscape. Dr. Zhao offers some other phrases for us to consider. The creativity gap, global citizenship, talent diversity, and digital competence. Presently, Dr. Zhao serves as University Distinguished Professor in the College of Education at Michigan State University. He is the founding director of the Center for Teaching and Technology, director of the U.S.-China Center for Research on Educational Excellence, executive director of the Confucius Institute and Institute for Chinese Teacher Education. He earned his doctorate in educational psychology and master's degree in education at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and his BA in English language education at Sichuan Institute of Foreign Languages in China. He has taught at Michigan State University since 1996. Among his most recent courses are Globalization and Education, Education Reforms Around the Globe, and Technology, Culture, and Society. In 2009, Dr. Zhao was awarded the Mangold Trust Fellow by the Asia Education Foundation and the University of Melbourne. He is a fellow for the International Academy for Education. His experience as an educator is distinguished and extensive. He told me earlier that he makes over 200 speeches and presentations a year in 10 countries and 30 states. His current education research interests include globalization, computer gaming in education, teachers' use of technology, and computer-assisted language learning. Perhaps most importantly, Dr. Zhao is an advocate for change, for transformation in how we think about education, and his message is inherently hopeful. The road ahead may be a difficult one, but we have abundant strengths from which to build. Colleagues and friends from Buncombe County, Asheville City, RISA, and UNCA, please join me in welcoming Dr. Yang Zhao.
Thank you, Donna. I never had a better introduction about myself. Normally, I don't get an introduction. I just step on the stage and tell them who I am, and that's very nice of you. Thank you. I want to thank the Chancellor for opening your house to all of us, and it was very nice. And also, actually, more importantly, I want to thank the people who brought me here, because I found the university a great place, and the people are very nice. And I also found the answer why, where the Biltmore came from today. I asked many people, nobody could find out. I think Nancy found out. How many of you knew where Biltmore? Why did they name it Biltmore? Go back. It's not in the Wikipedia. It's not even there. You can't find it on the Wikipedia either. It's very tough. And as Donna said, even though I make a lot of presentations, but today is especially a great honor because I had food from your Chancellor early mornings. I mean, afternoon, I owe that to the food. And that most important is that you have such a diverse audience here. And sometimes again, our Chancellor said, we don't take ourselves seriously. I make fun of a lot of groups. In front of the students, I make fun of the teachers, and in front of the teachers, I make fun of the students. But today we have both here, so I kind of lost that one. We also have school board members and school administrators here. We have university faculty and teachers, so this is going to be very hard. And they said some people will be here, but I didn't realize they're so different. Also, we have people who are just born yesterday. We have people who are born last millennium. So we have age mixture as well. But anyway, so as anybody normally does presentations, I over-prepare. So I have about 300 slides, and I'm going to spend about 1 minute on each. So if you want to hang out with me, the most important thing will be on the last slide. Okay. So I may follow the slides or may not. That's, do you remember the presidential debate last time? You don't even have to answer the question that's asked to you. The slides I use is on this website. Just take down this website. You don't have to take notes, this website. And it's very easy, actually, to find my name if you spell Zhao correctly. There are only about 205 million Zhaos in China, but it's spelled, you can find me. And there's a lot of blogs I have there, new video stuff, if you like. You can leave messages up there. So that's trying to save some paper if you write that down. If you can't find me, just always email me. Now, when you give a presentation, you have to have a title. Okay, you have to have a title. A lot of times, actually, most of the time, I think presentations should not have titles. Because when you have a title, you confine yourself, you do not respond to your audience. So when I was preparing this thing, I said, I'll make up a title. And this title is based on the book. So this is a product placement. It's a marketing scam, you know, that I have to use the title of the book to tell you. However, it does capture the essence of this talk in many ways. I hope it's going to be meaningful to school leaders and students, especially those high school students. I love the high school students there. Thanks for coming, because I can never convince my son to read my book. Now he has to. I think what we need to consider today is really, should the U.S. try to catch up with other countries, or should we try to continue to capitalize on our traditional strength and to lead the way, where the globe should go? That's how the book is about. When I said, are we trying to catch up with other countries, it really has to do with the current education reform in the U.S. I think U.S. education today, U.S. public education, is at a crossroads, and a very hard one too. On the one hand, I think the major mainstream policymakers out of Washington, D.C., out of the state, is pushing us down to the road of standardization, centralization, high-stakes testing, narrowed curriculum. That may be the wrong path. That's the message. So if you want to look at this, over the past 2 decades, even beyond that, the U.S. education reform has really been focused on this, on trying to have more standards, meaning that common core standards, like Donna said, everybody learn the same thing. And this kind of reform, when I examine it from a person who had lived in a totalitarian government from China, who has been trying to run away from standards all his life. Now I came here, I started thinking about I should move to Canada. That's the idea. Because when I run into this, I said, how does it make sense? And also what's surprising to me, truly surprising to me, now we're judging our students' success based on what they call state tests. We want to say whether you are good or not. We want to say the state has deemed you proficient or excellent. I don't think the state should judge my value. I judge the state, how the state is performing. So that's actually bothers me most. It's not the healthcare bill. It's the education. We are moving to almost like tyranny. I can't believe American people who value individual rights so much would allow people to define if their kids meet the state requirement. This is like something really funny to me. I've never joined the NRA. I'm studying the Second Amendment again, but it's. Now that we face actually a very tough time. After 8 years of No Child Left Behind, we're going to move to reauthorization this year of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And of course, the Race to the Top. Race to the Top is a really funny name. I don't know how many of you know about Race to the Top. Race to the Top is an unprecedented amount of money, $4.35 billion, given to one guy, that's Arne Duncan, who played basketball with our president. That's Barney Duncan, Secretary of Education. No Secretary of Education has had that much money. So with this money, he's saying, okay, we're going to push all national policy with this grant called Race to the Top. But actually, it's really a really bad name. Because once you reach the top, where do you go? After you reach the top, you come down, right? It's going to go down. To me, I would say, crawl to the top, gradually. Much more interesting because eventually you have a hope to go. Anyways, with the idea is that with the Race to the Top funds, it's all pushing the same thing: standards, centralization, and a market-driven, but not trying to take care of all students. All of this, if you look at the Common Core standards, you're aware of this. Many of you, basically, they're trying to make all states adopt the Common Core standards in 2 areas, mathematics and language arts. Students in Asheville will be studying the same thing, will be measured against the same standards as those in Michigan and other places, which sounds grand, but does not make sense as I will go through, explain the whole process. Now, all of this has to do with our view we need to catch up with other countries. That's why I take this quote from Thomas Friedman, who said, you can see this idea of how our children are competing with children in India, in China, and how our education is worse than education system in other countries. So this has, all of those things have to do with that, because now with Common Core standards, they also talk about globally benchmark standards. So you see a global homogenization of educational practices and policies driven by this measurement, actually in many places. I was recently in South Africa, in Cape Town. Their Minister of Education and their governor came to talk to us, and they had the same idea. Even as South Africa, they want to be competing. They want to score as well as those countries, like say in Finland or England or US. They want to score the same way in the same domain. It just does not make sense, the homogenization. But all of this relates to the misperception of something called achievement gap. You've heard about achievement gap all the times, how our students do not achieve as well as others. But this talk of achievement gap of American schools being worse than schools in other places is not new. But when we talk about today, it's as if it's new. It's really been there for a long time. I'll just show you a little bit of history. When I became a US citizen, they had to give me a history test. So this is what I learned from the history test. It's actually useful. The first talk, as far as I can remember, as far as I can trace back the history, is in 1958, how American schools are worse than schools in Russia at that time. 1958, there's a Life magazine's cover story. Remember 1957 when Russia launched, at that time the USSR, the Soviet Union, launched Sputnik, the satellite. And we startled Americans. At that time, John F. Kennedy was running, I think, rerun for the re-election for the Senate. And they created a term called the missile gap. See, in the US, we're making fewer missiles than the Russians. And whenever there is a problem like that, we always try to blame public education. It means our schools are not producing enough scientists or smart scientists or technologists to make these missiles. And now actually, the global financial crisis, they're already blaming public schools now because they said, how come you did not teach Bernie Madoff to be nice to other people, taking money? So at that time they found, I said, okay, there must be some other reasons. They said, our schools must not be good enough. That's why we could not compete with the Russians. And so they went to look for the answer, and they found the answer. The answer is really shows on this picture. That is, this is two high school students. Can you guess which one is American? The happy kid, right? His happiness caused Americans' demise in this missile race. He was too happy, this guy. That's Stephen. Stephen is a high school student in Chicago. So according to this article, Stephen did not spend enough time doing core academics, like physics, like chemistry. Therefore, but actually he was spending more time with dating, doing sports. I mean, at that time, they still had games to play, not to this video game, but had games to play. So doing all those kind of student activities, all those things. His counterpart, Alex is a student from Moscow. Look how serious he is. He is practically a scientist. And they went to study, found out he was spending a lot more time doing academic work, doing serious work. And now that explained the missile gap, which actually later on, as found out by the Defense Secretary McNamara, was not right. The information actually was wrong. The US had more missiles than others. But nonetheless, we started to blame education. Then later on, we are reminded always how our schools are worse. 1983, this time, the Soviet Union was no longer the enemy. Japan was. Remember, Japan was making cars, and the cars was beginning to be sold in Michigan. Michigan had a really, really hostile attitude to the Japanese. When I took my job in 1996 in Michigan, they said you should not drive a non-American car to Michigan. And they'll push you into Lake Michigan. I had to ditch my car at the border of Indiana, actually. But there's a serious thing, because that's another panic. They went to look for school difference. So there are two books published out of this. One is called The Learning Gap, one is called The Teaching Gap. How the Japanese were doing much better in teaching and learning. Again, this is written by American authors. And this report called Our Nation at Risk, I just want to remind you, is that this is very scary writing. It said, we are raising a new generation of Americans that is scientifically and technologically illiterate. Many of you teachers sitting here, you were in high school in 1983, you are illiterate, scientific and technologically. So this is reminded. 1995, TIMSS, the third international mathematics study, showed, again, American students perform much worse in science and math against other countries. Look at the US, it's right here. All these other countries perform much better than Americans. You look here, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, all these areas do much better than the US. They're regarded as the example of US copy. We should copy them. So actually, these countries have become, for a while, education tourist destinations. You think Asheville is a tourism spot? No. These countries, they've attracted a lot of education researchers to these countries, boost their economy a lot because we visit them. Now Finland has become that country. People go to Finland a lot, spend a lot of money studying in their schools. But the most interesting one I want to show you is this one, is the 2-minute minutes. This is the most recent talk about how American schools are worse than others. But you notice the shift of countries. We had Russia, Japan, Singapore. Now this time it's China and India. And the guy who made the film is named Robert Compton. He's a venture capitalist from, actually, at Memphis. The film he made is a documentary, but took almost the same format, the same storyline as the Life magazine story, except he followed, this time, 6 high school students, 2 from Indiana. See, this guy's too happy. Oh, this guy's, Indian guy's getting happier too. But this is Brittany, this is Neil. They're from Indianapolis. And I think Brittany is at Indiana Bloomington, and Neil is at Purdue University now. They're fine. And these 2 guys, they're from Bangalore, India, and these are from Shanghai, China. If you watch the film basically is trying to tell the same story as you saw in the Life magazine. The Chinese and Indians, they spend a lot more time on core academics, mathematics, physics, and spend more time in school and school-related matters. That's the message. And these 2 American high school students, you know what they do? They show them doing, again, sports, being a student body president, and dating, playing video games at home. And that spells the demise of America. This was made in 2007. It's titled 2-minute minutes. 2-minute minutes basically means 4 years in high school. The message is that how you spend 2-minute minutes will determine your own future. High school students, exam, what do you do? Don't play the video games anymore. And that's not only troublesome for you, but also troublesome for America. So when I show this film to a lot of my Chinese friends, I have a lot of Indian friends too, all of them think this guy was crazy to draw the conclusion. They said, these 2 Americans will become the boss of the all 4 Chinese and Indians. They will all be working for the 2 guys, actually, they said. So later on, I had actually interesting debate with Compton on different occasions. We wrote together, not together, against each other in the same journal. We debated face-to-face on the same stage, actually in Indiana. You can hear the debate with them. And we actually had a non-confrontational debate with me, Thomas Friedman, and Bob Compton in England on the same stage. But I think the Brits were afraid of Americans getting in the bullfight. So we had separate presentations, but we're on the same stage. Interesting. When they made debate, I learned a lot more about Mr. Compton's view, because he's a venture capitalist. He invests money. And he talked a lot of times about why he made this film. He said what motivated him to make this film was he was scared with a trip to India in 2005. On that trip, he visited some Indian kindergartens. He asked the Indian kindergartners, how old they are, 5, 6-year-olds, asked, what do you want to be? What do you want to become when you grow up? And he said, one after another, these kids, 5, 6-year-olds, said they want to be an engineer, a doctor, a scientist. And he said, that's very scary. His daughters, who grew up in Tennessee, never had these big dreams. I said, well, sure, of course. He said, that's great. I said, my daughter, when she was 5, she wanted to become an elephant. That's her dream. I said, and I thought that was a pretty good dream. That's a very nice dream. I even supported that. I said, And my son actually now, who is a proud freshman at the University of Chicago, he wanted to be a truck driver. I said, that's great. That's my retirement home. I would like that idea. And actually recently I want to update on the idea of dreams. In China, actually this was last few weeks or few months, national news reported a Chinese kid, kindergartner, he said when he grows up, he wants to become a corrupted government official. That's his dream. I said, that's a pretty good dream. Now, with this dream talk, the reason I cite this, I use this example with Mr. Compton is to say, a lot of times people look at things differently. They don't really, that's not a good indicator. So this achievement gap is not necessarily the good indicators. Just to show you why those gaps, despite all this talk, the US remains still the most competitive nation economically. The US still receives the most creative patents than any other country. The US leads the globe by about 25 to 30 years, according to a recent RAND Corporation study, in terms of the capacity for scientific and technological innovation. If you imagine the past 60 years or 50 years, the US has led 2 waves of major technological transformation. Look at the digital, computers and the internet, and now we are leading the biotech, the transformation. So if all our education were so poor, so bad, how could that happen? If we were already preparing a generation of Americans who are scientifically and technologically illiterate, 83, who made these changes? And by the way, according to the political decision makers, since 83, our schools have not improved, actually has got worse. So that means their students, where did they come from? All those things. And also to show you how the US economy compares to China. Many of you have been to China. China is growing dramatic and significant. There's no question about that. But we need to understand China's economy is very different from American economy. China's economy has not been built by its education. It's built on cheap labor and inexpensive resources and at a huge cost of environmental degradation. Just to show you the example of how different our economy is and what kind of type of people we need. This is a map of based on human population. So you can see here we go. China is very big, human population. Okay, this is Japan. This is India. The US is small, and you can't really say Canada from here. That's very small. And Australia is very small. So let's just give a sense of where human beings are. Now let's compare to this. This is actually, when I present to the Europeans, they said, you're making fun of Americans, how heavy they are, body mass. I said, no. I said, you misread this. This is royalties and license fees exports. That means this is a knowledge economy. The US exports knowledge to other people. And the US dominates everybody. Look at this one. Now if you look compared to China, that's toy exports. So the two economy needs 2 different types of people. When you look, even though China may become number 2 in GDP, but how they make the GDP? Where does that come from? What kind of knowledge you need? So there's no way we should compete with that. And China wants to become this. That's why they're reforming their education system. At the same time, despite all of this difference, all the countries we want to copy, Singapore, China, Korea, Japan, are actually reforming their education system to be like America. For example, China, 2002, when the year No Child Left Behind was signed into law, forbids the use of testing to rank schools, to rank teachers. I was just in China. If you get on my website, you can see me on the Chinese national television talking with about China's recent education reform, praising them for trying to get to the matter again to say, really do not use any standardized testing to judge schools, judge teachers, judge students. So Chinese high school curriculum reform, unlike most US states, they try to move away from a core curriculum. China has been practicing a national curriculum, national textbook, national test for decades. They realize that's not working. That's not preparing them to have the people to be innovative, to be creative. So they want to relax. If you look at the high school curriculum reform, it's practically the opposite of what we did in the late 90s. Michigan has a so-called merit curriculum. They are basically trying to require everybody taking the same course. When you make this required core curriculum, core courses, I think we should ask one very important question. When you make a national curriculum or school curriculum, you are in essence making a bet on behalf of the children, millions of children, to say, if you follow me, if you take 4 years of English, 4 years of math, or including Algebra 2, you will be okay. That's why we're making the bet. But really, is that going to be okay? So that's why when we talk about this thing, I think American education reform now is focused on making something what we call making it more effective, hold people accountable, but we don't ask the question, make them effective in doing what? I look at this Chinese education reform system, Japanese too. They had very high test scores, but now they don't like it. So they're moving away. They said they want enhanced emotional education. They want to cultivate students as emotionally well-rounded human beings. They want people to have developed individuality. They want creativity, want more choices, more autonomy. Singapore is another country always scored very high. You know what they want? They want to reduce the content. They think schools taught too much. So students were wasting their time on memorizing this useless knowledge. They're losing their ability to be critical thinkers, to be creative thinkers, to be entrepreneurs. You know, actually in Singapore now, yesterday I was on Jamaica radio with someone from Singapore, from Finland. We're talking about education. The one from Singapore said, now academic subjects by government decree is reduced to about 18%. So they don't want them to teach too much. They said, we want kids to be able to be happy, to be liberated, to be creative. So all of these things. And South Korea, look at what they want. They want to cultivate creative, autonomous, self-driven human resources. All these examples show that there's countries who have had traditional high scores, but now they're reforming to become the US. So it's big questions of why did all those talks about US schools being worse than others have not really been proven true? Why do these countries we want to copy, we mean the US, want to copy the US system we want to throw away? You know, actually I was joking, maybe we should treat education ministers. Send Arne Duncan to China, they'll be happier. I think send someone from China over here. But why is this? You know, I think this really has to do with our interpretation about achievement gap. All those gaps that measure is true. Our students, in general, do not test as well. Our students do not spend as many days as others in schools. Our students do not spend as many hours studying core academics as other students. That's all true. There is a gap. But in our life, we have gaps in all areas, right? You have gaps in some are taller, some shorter, some run faster, some run slower. But some gaps matter, some gaps don't. Here, I'll give you an example of my personal gap. I didn't know we were going to have students here, so I had this gap. I'm going to expose something I'm not supposed to do for teenagers. So you can close your eyes, but I'll show you. You guys never drink, you don't know what this is. Okay, just pretend. This is actually, to adults, it's beer. For others, it's liquid. Okay, so beer drinking. I grew up in China in a village. We never had a beer. So I never had enough time on task, use education terms, time on task. I never practiced beer drinking. So when I couldn't drink much. I mean, I still can't do much beer drinking. So when I got to the US, you go to graduate school. I was over 21, so I could go, legal. My graduate student take me to the bar, we drink. And I try very hard, I can finish one. That's in 1 minute. But most of those people, when they're in a mood, they can finish 3 in a minute. Right there, that's my achievement gap. I mean, I couldn't. I wasn't able to achieve as much as they could. That's achievement gap, right? Don't you think it's the same thing? But that gap, fortunately, has not mattered. To some of you who have visited China, you know actually that gap can matter in China. Some of those superintendents who visited China, you can stand up. You don't have to say. You went to China, and China is a drinking culture. How much you drink actually matters, but not beer, other stuff. Okay. So these gaps actually don't really matter. So there's as a professor, I cannot just give you beer drink as evidence. I give you some real academic evidence now. The first international mathematics study conducted in 1964 on 13-year-olds. Some of you might be 13 in 1964. If you were, your math scores compared to other countries was not good. You put the US to shame because the country finished second to last, only before Sweden. However, as we know, the purpose of education, if you believe in Jefferson, is not about test scores. It's really about building a nation, a citizenship that will help us to live a happy, wealthy life, and a life you can pursue liberty. So and this should be measured in other things as a nation. No nation should really take pride in these high test scores. You take pride in its democracy, wealth, GDP, growth, and lifestyle, right? Quality of life. So someone took a study and compared whether the test scores 40 years ago predicted other indicators. So now they took 40 years later and said, let's look at GDP, how wealthy a country is. Of all these countries who participated in the test, they showed there's a negative correlation. That is, the higher a nation test scores 40 years ago, the worse its economical performance, means its GDP. So we should thank God it didn't score well, those guys. Rate of growth means how fast did the economy grow. The same story, the rate of economic growth for nations improved as test scores dropped 40 years ago. Productivity, there's no relationship between those who scored higher on the math did not produce more productive on an hourly basis than those who scored lower. The quality of life, FIM scores correlated negative with the quality of life on a 0.57. Negative means the higher test score 40 years ago, the worse the quality of life. I guess those guys must have been traumatized. There are excessive math training in the math camps. That's why quality of life is affected. Democracy, same story. I'm running through this quickly because I have other stories to share. Livability, creativity, all of this show either no correlation or negative correlation. It doesn't mean those test scores, were not true. It just shows those test scores do not predict a nation's prosperity. By the way, grades, I hate to tell this when you're from high school kids, grades in your K-12 schools do not predict your future. There is it's GPAs and IQ test scores in K-12 constitutes about 20% of a person's future success. That's basically. So you all have to come to UNC Asheville to get your real good education. That's where it matters. Okay, grades on college campus matters, I guess. So that's where the study came from. Now, just to take some of the idea, you just remember one thing. I was trying to use all this first part to provide evidence convincing about one thing. Let's not worry about this so-called gap. These gaps don't really matter. And these gaps didn't matter because, like Albert Einstein said, not everything that matters can be counted. And now, what matters? What matters in the future? What matters in a society? What matters in the 21st century? I study history. I love history. So I read this good history book called Day of Empire. When you build a community, build an institution, we should all think about this. By a professor, actually a law professor, Amy Chua, out of Yale University. She was a law professor, but she just studied history. What she wrote about, she had a simple question. Why at certain times we have one nation rise to global dominance? Let's say the Roman Empire, the Tang Dynasty China. Remember all those, the British Empire, the American Empire today. And what caused their downfall? What happened? Then why did they just suddenly drop off global dominance? After a lot of research, she came to a simple answer. She said, I found all these nations, when they began to rise, they share something in common. They are all tolerant. They were able to take advantage of the diversity of talents of the places they've conquered, the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of abilities, and diversity of talents. Even at the Roman Empire, when they conquer a place, they take advantage of them. Although they may not be nice to those slaves, but at least they allow the slaves to participate in their production. Unlike Adolf Hitler, he was trying to purify. He was not trying to be tolerant. He just wanted to take the wealth away but get rid of other people. And these countries, these empires all began to fall down when they began to try to purify, to cleanse others. It makes sense. To build an empire, to build a community, you need a diversity of talents because economies change, economies shift. The same thing. Even though sometimes we can genetically program corns to be very, very productive, but we dare not to have one type of gene strains, to have one type of corn, because it's very susceptible to disease. Michigan has been trying to build on one type of economy, the auto industry. When it's gone, we suffer. We should have been diversifying that. The second idea, a lot of other ideas supported by economists like Richard Florida, who wrote the book called The Rise of the Creative Class. He argues for the success of any community. He did a lot of research of communities like San Francisco area, the Idaho area, the Boston area, and also for institutions. For you to succeed, he said, now what do we need? We need 3 T's. He said, technology, talents, and tolerance. For if you want to build a great university, a great community, a great school, a great country, we need all of those. And that is what matters. It's diversity of talents, it's creativity, it's entrepreneurship, and a passion to work. And all of this actually are natural in our human beings. Schools do not necessarily teach them. Schools can support them, foster them. American schools, I can say, do not deliberately teach them, but we do not kill them as effectively as other countries. That's basically it. We have more leftovers because all schools in essence demand some kind of conformity. That's why we want to prepare citizens. But our schools, luckily, do not do that as well as others. So when I go to Asian countries, they say, how do you teach creativity? I say, we don't teach creativity. I say, once you teach, you lose it. So I wrote an article actually in some Detroit Free Press that said, creativity cannot be taught, but it can be killed. And all those practices, standardization, centralization, are killing our creativity. So how did our schools do what's our strength? How do we preserve the diversity? I have 2 examples. One is the school talent shows. This is great. I got to tell you this. All of us go to school talent shows, but I didn't have that in China. So I love my daughter's school talent shows. When she takes me there, I said, this is great. School talent shows something probably we get rid of soon because it does not support standardized test. But school talent shows are the best example of American strength in education. It has no standards, no accountability. Right? No accountability. There's no reward or punishment, right? How everybody does. It cultivates that diversity of talents. It allows us to value individual talents because some of you can do karate, some of you can do the violin, but the violinist cannot say the karate guy is not talent. You basically have to negotiate. We recognize each other. So we have multiple criteria to judge success. Look at American schools. Traditionally, we have the homecoming queen or king, right? You got a soccer player, the basketball player, but you also have some artists. You got also the nerds and the geeks. All of them have a chance to do something, to thrive. I don't think we're tolerant enough, but now as a government, we are reducing that diversity. Another thing I learned about American education, which is fabulous, is learned from my son's first grade teacher, Mrs. Margie Lippy. She told me, this was many years ago, I still remember, she said, I believe children like popcorn. You guys in here, you don't realize what that means. It means, I said, well, what do you mean? He said, some pop early and some pop late. I said, yeah, but does someone get burned too? So it's an interesting concept, right? Very interesting. But that's actually very common sense. Most American parents, teachers believe this, even kids. But now standards don't. Standards said everybody should develop the same ability at the same time. If you are not good in this area, you are at risk. What do we do to you? We put you in remedial lessons. I was thinking about special talents. Michael Phelps. You know Michael Phelps, the guy, the good Michael Phelps, before he did the bad thing? He was already doing a lot of, he was ADHD, right? If he had been in the No Child Behind days, he would not be an Olympic gold medalist. He would still be hooked on phonics in the basement somewhere. He's remedial man, literacy. He can read all this stuff. So we forget about this idea about respect individual differences. We forget about have faith in every child. We forget about giving them multiple chances. But that's the strength of this. So that's why I have this idea. Forget about achievement gap, think about human gap, the creativity gap, and measure education in the right way. Now I'm going to address a little bit about globalization. You know this, American schools have strength, but they are not perfect. We have a lot of problems. The reason I was trying to identify the strength is to say that the current policies are fixing the wrong things. We should capitalize our strength because globalization and new challenges demands us to continue our strength, to treat our schools as local entities as uniqueness. And that's why globalization comes into play. Globalization does bring competition because globalization in essence is a shortening of distance. People have become laborers. For example, the first voyage of Christopher Columbus took him 3 months. And today, I checked actually, there's no direct flight from the Bahamas to Spain. So I get on the Expedia. I found with a layover in Miami, it's 13 hours. That's a big difference. The first telegram message crossed Atlantic. That's the message. You guys, especially thinking when they invent something that significant, they will send something more useful. They didn't send this message. They just sent this message. But I guess this is useful. So this message took them 17 hours to send this message across the Atlantic Ocean. But that's already huge improvement over pigeons, right? Think about that. It's across Atlantic. But now today, depends on how fast you type, basically, right? A text message on the phone or email about less than a minute, and the money it takes to make this cross-Atlantic communications. 1927, first time commercial phone calls made available from New York to London, $65, 3 minutes. That's equivalent of $1,000 today. And today, if you don't use Skype, OVO, or other kind of chat programs, you can pay a few cents a minute to talk to London. Now, all of this basically says something we call the death of distance. Now, that's the essence of globalization. Whenever you think about you're doing something, looking for a job, build an institution, look for educational opportunities, keep this in mind. Keep this, that these things has died in some ways. So actually, when I look, you say, oh, you come to Asheville, I say, no problem, I'll be there next day. In the last month, I've traveled probably already into 3 different countries. And I said yesterday morning, I was talking to Jamaica Radio with people from 4 different countries and different locations. Distance died. That's a good thing. It's also a bad thing. That's the cause of all the so-called job outsourced. This is the global supply chain of Dell computers. They're in all over the place. Japan was making CD-ROMs. China was making cooling fans. Means jobs are being outsourced. That's where Thomas Friedman is talking about how we have to compete with people from other countries. Because that has to do with this. When you can send your jobs anywhere, when you can have your production done any place, who you can employ has to do with how much you pay. The qualification has to match the price. So now today, if an Indian engineer costs 5 to 7 times less than an American, but if you have exactly the same qualification, why would anyone pay you 5 to 7 times more? So that's the first question why I'm so against global homogenization. Why we shouldn't try to catch up with anybody, even if we did test as well, but we cost more. So when some people in American business said that, actually when Bob Compton and others said, I moved my business to China or India because I cannot find the talents here. I said, no. I challenged the General Motors and Intel too, and AT&T. I said, no. As you guys are lying. You can't find the same talents at the same price. If you're willing to pay higher price, the talents are here. Actually, this is a good example. Toyota, when they had no trouble, Toyota were able to hire talents in the US, General Motors couldn't. That's very funny, right? So it's about pricing issue. So now I think for you, I'm so happy to see this high school kids there. Think about, why would we pay you extra? Why do you worth that? Educators, parents, think about, what are we teaching our children to have that would be worth extra? And the globalization brings other challenges too, like global warming, poverty, and also the viruses, all these global human conflicts. All this are our children have to face. With globalization intensifies these problems. These are the new challenges. Technology brings new challenges too. As you know, you all have seen this picture, right? But you know what technology does to us? The idea is that we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. Just basic technology makes certain things more valuable, makes certain things less valuable. High definition TV. You've seen all this high definition TV makes a picture look nicer, right? But it creates winners and losers. You can guess on this list which group will look better on high definition TV, which group would not, right? I mean, you guys don't want to see Donald Trump on high definition TV, right? Well, actually, on any TV, he should be listening on the radio. But that idea is called technology redefines talents. Certain technology becomes more valuable. I'm going to rush through this thing. I want to show you one example. Some knowledge becomes more valuable because of technology. Some knowledge becomes less valuable. In London, I go there a lot, so I use their examples. I talk to taxi drivers. London taxi drivers have this thing called a very special brain. Their brains function more like a bird. They know wherever you want to go. They know all the places. Unlike in New York, you get on taxi, asking where they say, But anyway, in London, they know. They're very proud. They don't use GPSs. Because they have to pass this test called their knowledge test. And that test takes about 36 months or 3 years to study to complete. Very valuable knowledge. So they're very proud. And now that knowledge is being challenged. That monopoly is being challenged by a $200 device called GPS. In London, it's called a satellite navigation system called SatNav. And there was actually a race between them. So now that knowledge becomes less valuable. They have a new service coming up called Minicap. You can call the Minicap. They can get someone just right off the plane, give them GPS, they can find the location. They're going to revise this test. So in colleges, universities, our schools, when you think about what knowledge become obsolete. And of course, technology replaced a lot of jobs, a lot of those things. So where's our new hope? We have foreigners, cheap laborers take our jobs away. We have machines take our jobs away and make our knowledge less valuable. Where's the new hope? Our new hope lies in Madonna. If you had lived in Michigan, you know Madonna. You guys all know Madonna, right? Just remember this. Madonna was born in Bay City, Michigan, very small school. She didn't do great. She was one of the students you would advise to stay home on testing days because she may lower your average score. But globalization made her talent very valuable. She had a very small market, but now she reached on a global market. So before, when we judge talent, when we judge the value of knowledge, we judge based on the local market. If you're not useful locally, we don't teach you. That's what we use to prepare for mass production. The 21st century is the century of personalization, customization. We need a lot of niche talent. So anyone in your school, any children, no matter how quirky, how freaky, how strange their talents be, they can be valuable and useful on the global market. That's the global market expanded opportunity for that. So there's something, on the global market, you have to be unique to be valuable. You cannot be the same to be valuable. That's why the second hope lies in eBay. You guys do eBay here, right? eBay gives us great lessons. In my book, actually, I had a whole chapter discuss how eBay gives us insights about education. But I want to just tell you one example here. eBay is garage sale. It's a glorified garage sales. You do garage sales here locally, but garage sales are local. Most often, your neighbors come, your friends come, they drink your punch, but they have the same junk as you do, they never buy anything. That's right. Because it's a homogeneous culture. It's the same thing. eBay is different. eBay is global. eBay has cultural gaps. eBay allows people to sell anything that's strange. You know, have you ever successfully sold your used denture to your neighbor? Nobody. But on eBay, you can sell that. It's very cool. Someone sold actually jars of ghost, dinosaur poops, all those kind of stuff. Amazing stuff. Why? Because that follows the rule, turn one man's trash into another man's treasure has to rely on cultural, economical gaps. So now think about what kind of things. What you have here is common, other places may not have. You all speak English here. Some of you do at least, but with a funny accent. Okay. But that funny accent can be useful. You know, this is a true story. In New York, people speak a New York accent, Brooklyn accent. It's not valuable. People make fun of you. They laugh at you. But that has recently become of economical value because now they are hired as tutors to train call center workers in India. But those people who speak Indian accent, they cannot pretend to be working for United Airlines. Now they want to speak with a New York accent to pretend to work for United Airlines. So they have to have accent trainers, coaches. Now in the future, FedEx may hire you to train some Chinese to speak like a North Carolina Asheville accent. That would be valuable. That's just one example. Now think about English. It's hard for you to charge your friends $5 to have them take you to coffee to practice English. You can make that money in China or in India, in other countries. If you offer English lessons online, people will take it from you. So that's the second hobby, is about what you have that's common here, what others don't. Remember depth of distance? So to wrap up this very quickly, yeah, you can access all the slides. I want to make some suggestions. What's valuable in the future? Daniel Pink wrote a book called Moving from Information Age to the Conceptual Age. He argues, traditionally, we relied on left brain thinking skills. That's your logic, quantitative, and verbal skills. That's basically math, science, and language arts. But he says now we need the right brain thinking skills. The right brain are the ability to design, that means to be artistic, to create something that's beautiful, that's useful, that's new. Also to be able to use narratives, tell stories, not only logic. To be able to organize things, symphony, to conduct things, synthesize things, to have empathy, emotional, to understand other people's feelings, to be able to be playful, entertain, and also to be able to interpret meaning from the grand universe. These are the new essential skills. I don't necessarily buy all of this, but it has some meaning because not everyone is right-brained. So my action suggestion would be, for our education, for us to think through all these issues is going to be, think about our strength. To lead the way is think about what's our strength. For every person, what's your individual strength? What's our community strength? What's our school strength? What we have, others don't have. Learn from eBay, learn from Madonna. Okay? So our strength as a nation, the U.S. education strength is this idea about multiple criteria, believe in children, value individuality, individual differences. We also have a support system. We value arts. We have soccer moms. We have science museums. In China, we have the homework mom who stays at midnight. That's the Chinese culture. So you don't want to do the same. That's what China has to offer, as the U.S. has to offer. And also U.S. schools are much better equipped than others. Look at most schools are like this. There's no reason our school should be teaching the same thing as schools in other places anyway. So what I would suggest, for all of us to start a strength movement, to think education as a way to capitalize, to discover each and everybody's strength, instead of trying to fix their deficit. What's our strength? What do we have to offer? Capitalize on that as individuals, teachers, schools, communities, universities. Business have been doing this a lot. Do not try to be everybody else, to say where I'm short, say what I'm strong, and continue to do that. We have to think about global competence. Your strength can only be realized and valued on a global scale. Our students need to engage globally. All our students, no matter how smart you are, if Madonna did not have a global strategy team, she would not be this successful. A lot of businesses fail because they do not have the global cultural competence. A good example, Walmart. You know Walmart, right? They've been trying to branch out in Japan for many years. Recently, they suddenly realized, and they're changing the strategy. They said, you know, the amount of bathroom tissues they sell is the size of a Japanese apartment. That's why they don't buy this stuff. And that's why they were not so successful. Now they're suddenly changing this thing. It's a very simple cultural issue. Most car design teams now have international cultural consultants in those things. Global competence, global perspective. We need, for example, here, we need leaders to think how Asheville can be valuable in South Africa, in China, in India. That's why actually I was advising Michigan Edge Group. I said, why do people want to come to Michigan? Why? On a global scale. And finally, I did not talk a lot about this, digital competence. We have entered in a digital age that our children have to be able to live and lead in a global digital environment, develop digital competence. In our schools, when we teach about literacy, it's about multimedia literacy. You know, in language arts, we teach people writing a 500-word essay. But do they know how to compose a 5-minute multimedia video? Universities like Tufts University is already accepting college application packages in those formats, not necessarily in traditional essays. So what I want to summarize is to say, our education is about celebrating everyone's individual talents, to capitalize on their strength, not only for economical reasons, but also for social reasons. And number two, we also have to think about we are a citizen of the globe. So we have to develop multiple hybrid identity. We can love Asheville as much as we can. But at the same time, what happens in Africa affects us. What happens in India affects us. Their well-being is as important as our well-being. We have become interdependent. We cannot escape that. And number three, in any way we think, we have to think education as a future-oriented business. We have to think about what the future holds. For example, technology. A lot of our schools now block technology. Our children have more technological power in their palms than a lot of teachers had, when they're actually in the homeroom. We block them. My daughter has to sneak into the bathroom to text me because she has an iPhone. And actually, I've been asked her, I said, show your Kindle. She reads a lot in Kindle. I said, go to your school, demand your school board to buy textbooks on the Kindle. And she's afraid. She's only 7th grade. And I'm trying to make her a rebel. But anyways, we have to think about use the tools to reach our kids. Today, according to a recent study, good children, average Americans spend 7.5 hours on media content outside school. That's a full-time job. Are our schools reaching these kids using this medium? Are we creating engaging content? So just to end, American education is at a very critical time. Right now, we are handing our education to governments as far as distant. And honestly, I did not migrate here for this kind of things. That's why I'm speaking up about this. And I hope we will act as a social agency. We want to preserve our strength and make sure our children can continue to dream and develop their creativity and realize their strength. Thank you.
How strong. Thank you very much. I will, with your help, facilitate questions. There are folks who are in our Teaching Fellows group who have microphones. And if you would use those, that would save me from repeating your question and make it possible for others to hear. Do you have questions for Dr. Zhao? Yes, here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you very much for your lecture. I have a question about the testing, and that is, who do you think is benefiting from imposing the idea or inserting the idea of testing into the public schools? I just read something recently by John Gatto, who I think wrote The Underground History of the American Education, and he's suggesting that what parents and students should do is simply politely refuse to take the standardized test.
Yeah, who benefits? First of all, I actually, normally on standardized testing weeks, my daughter is on trip with me. I take her out on the trips, and I send my that's and but I said no, you don't need to do this. But the school still have to have her make up, but then it takes less time. But actually, this testing issue is that I think it benefits many parties. Otherwise, people wouldn't talk about it. Number one, I think it benefits in a political sense. Politicians, because we have spent all the last half a century saying how bad American schools are. Now, all the public believe we have bad public schools in the U.S. But actually, the survey shows everybody believes the bad schools in other people's district. Most Americans give A's to their own district. They give a C to other people's districts. That's very interesting. However, that image drives this. If you want to become a political leader, you have to hold tough to schools. So to be tough is to be accountable. To be accountable is to give scores, to reduce any bottom line into a single score so you can compare. That started in 1983. They start ranking with those things. So that's number two, of course, I don't have any proof and evidence, but I know we spend lots of money on testing kids. You know how much money? In Michigan, I said, we spend at least over $10 million on one subject, on one grade. Imagine how many more of those things. So someone is making a lot of money on this. I wrote a kind of amusing piece for Education Week, an op-ed piece. I said, if you want to win, I called it 6 strategies to win the race to the top. You can find that on my blog, and they published on Education Week. As one of the strategies said, writing a lot of money for testing companies and testing consultants, you'll win this race to the top funds. Yeah. Yes, please. This one over there.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. I'm an English as a second language teacher with the Buncombe County Schools, and my students have a maximum of 2 years, regardless of what grade they come in, to reach a proficiency in English that will allow them to take, or they are required after a maximum of 2 years, to take the end of grade tests, the end of course tests in English. I think it's criminal. What do you think?
I agree with you. I was actually an English teacher in China. I taught English, and I know how long it takes to be proficient in another language. I'm an immigrant. I lived in this country. I can tell you, I've lived in this country. I have a PhD. I'm a professor. There are still many things I don't know how to say in English. Seriously, I wouldn't know, because when I go to a doctor's visit, I have to bring an interpreter. I just pretend I know. I go back to China for doctor visit. I don't visit. I don't know the language. But no, seriously, this is actually the issue. When you look at the test scores, when they say test scores like a NAEP have stayed flat, people say our SAT scores have been going down. It's actually a population issue. We don't factor those things in. Now there are many more students take the SAT because now schools are forced to do it. And now students, before we only had like 5%, who of course score higher. Now you have 50, 60%. And of course the average will go down. That's right, because another thing is that if you look at NAEP, hasn't moved because we have a lot more immigrant children who come in here not prepared. And so they are now in this test whole area. This is basically to tell you, I hope all of you, when you look at this data, this newspaper, you would challenge them. You would think about the data are really very misleading, even about dropout rates too. Actually, I can tell you this, no state has truly good database to count high school dropouts yet. That's why they want to build a data set. That's why put a lot of money in there. But now, yet those numbers are used a lot. 45%, 28%. we actually don't know. We just have different counts. If you look at this, the serious numbers, we really have no clue. Another issue with this is that our poor schools, because I did not really address this sort of domestic gap. Our poor schools are very concentrated. Americans' education has always relied on local control, local solutions, local ingenious ways to deal with problems. Now the issue is that we are basically trying to nationalize educational problems. We are thinking the problems lies in Los Angeles unified, and to Chicago and Detroit, to Asheville, to Raleigh, to other places. This idea of national standards would solve the problem. It's just basically it's dream. It's worse than a dream. Actually, it's a nightmare. And state of Michigan has a state standards for many years now. State test every year. Has it solved Detroit's problem? No. Of course not. Atlanta, Georgia has the problem. Did it solve the problem Atlanta? No. So that's the idea. So I think in those things, as teachers, this afternoon I was able to talk to teaching fellows. I think we really need to act as protectors, as guardians of our students. We should protect from them. Education should have one of those do no harm clause. If schools cannot help, it needs that do not hurt. Schools do hurt people. A lot of students get hurt more than benefit from schools. And the thing that most criminal thing we can do is to hurt their self-esteem and confidence.
Another question? Over here, please. One of our high school students.
Whose job is it to change the policies today? Is it the student's job to say they don't want to take the test? Is it the teacher's job or the policymakers? How do we make them listen, I guess?
I think everyone's job. Don't refuse to take a test. Okay? Your teachers will be punished. Actually, I know examples why this system is so corrupt. There are schools, high school students deliberately want to punish their teacher. They hate their teacher and principal. They just mark all A's and B's. Seriously, San Diego, they start like that. I think the problem cannot be addressed at the school level. It's really a national policy problem. So we all need to act out on a political level. It's political level. In schools, I think we still should be good students. You do not want to suffer too much. We have to be smart, but we need to participate in the process. I haven't seen no one protest. I've seen one professor out of University of Connecticut, Jesse Turner. He read my book. He's inspired now. He started a walk to Washington, D.C. to protest. He's walking from Connecticut to Washington, D.C. He's got a huge YouTube group, Facebook group called Children Are More Than Test Scores. If you want to join that, you can join those. There are actually groups doing those things. We need to change it, our legislators, our policymakers, because what they're doing, they are shooting for short-term gains. If you remember again, the financial crisis, we are trying to reward people who can sell more mortgages. We know the system is not sustainable. We are trying to reward people get good test scores, but giving bad education. That's when we see happiness in raising test scores, we should always ask, what's the cost? What did we lose? People do not measure what's lost. And I know what can be lost. Look at China, look at Singapore, look at Japan, look at other systems. We see those examples. And you kids here, you will act, protect, actually do it for your children. Okay, you are children, but you have children too. This system has been here, but for now, I think you should all think about being different. Reserve your strength.
Thank you. Yes, right here.
I just had a quick question for you. Two of the things you identified are group skills or group work and being able in digital competency. I know these both fall under the heading of 21st century learning skills, they're calling them now. My question to you would be, since what we've identified as a problem is sort of a rigid set of standards in previous educational models, do you have any ideas for how we can basically not just duplicate that mistake and just have people just learn digital competencies, just work in groups, but not learn how to spell a correct sentence? Just curious.
Thank you. Exactly. Actually, I have a lot more in this in the book and this PowerPoint I didn't get to explain. When I said about strength-based movement, my argument is there are certain basic competencies people will grow into. For example, I'm not against math or literacy, but to a certain level, does everyone need algebra too? No. So there's certain basic levels, and the basic level, all human beings can achieve just at different times. So I wouldn't treat digital competence or global competence perhaps at the same level. So everybody should be aware of something else. But where do they get it, how they get it can be different. So that's why I'm advocating something called personalized learning. This is actually not me, it's British, the Brits, the UK. After trying about a decade of national standards, they came back to realize that's not working. So they're moving back to personalized learning. Personalized learning means that you have personalized learning goals. Your job is to help people realize their strength. Again, their dreams, their talents. As a society, we have to operate something basic, something common. But that something common is not hard to come by. That's when I look at U.S. education reform plans, I look, is this really from the most advanced country? Remember George Bush's big dream was that everybody can read. I know it's tough for him, but it's not really. But really, should not be a goal for the most advanced country. You think about that, right? Those are the basic things. Most people can do it. I think we are focused on the wrong thing. That's the reason.
One more question for this evening, right back here, please.
I'm a teacher, and I'm aware that we have teachers in our community who don't want the English as a second language child in their classroom, and also I've seen racist attitudes. What can we do as a community?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. It's because I run into that myself. You know, in Michigan, as I said, it's not a very friendly state, and in Michigan, most people did not go through global education, as I was suggested, so they cannot tell the difference from Chinese from Japanese. When they were hating Japanese, they thought I was Japanese. They were now hating Chinese, they think I'm Chinese. So actually, the state of Michigan, our governors, at the last campaign, the gubernatorial campaign, you look at the ads. You remember this, Granholm and the guy from Amway. If you look at their campaign slogans, the basic thing that competing say who hates China more. That's the idea. That's the idea. So Michigan, you run into this kind of issue. And look at our misunderstanding of Muslims, of other people, have different gods, different religions. I think we all have to start now from our schools, our classes. We have to get our children to experience other people a lot more, experience others as people. That's what this kind of conversation, like Thomas Friedman said, we are preparing children as global economical soldiers to kind of kill other countries. It's wrong. Today I said a lot about economical competitiveness. I really did not mean to that, because I say that that's the current discourse. What I meant is that if we are smart, we actually see opportunities in the competition. All those countries need stuff from us, and we need stuff from them. It's a trade. You see opportunities. If you're smart. If you are not smart, if you're as dumb as Michigan, that's where I talk to legislators a lot. I say, we've been dumb for all these years. We see them as threats. We sell them off. We try to hold on to the jobs that will never be held on to. Because all our politicians try to please their union. They say, well, protect your job. I was joking with the union. I said, if you guys start thinking about China as your market, you probably would not be worried about so much now. Now Michigan is so horrible. They're trying to become the next Hollywood, because now Detroit will be a great city for those bad war movies. I guess it's for the background. It's empty. So the issues we have to start now. And I talk to legislators a lot. You have to take a lot of courage to confront them. And I actually joke with the legislator. I said, I don't blame you, I blame your teachers. They didn't teach you to think globally about other people. So it still come back your fault, public school's fault. Remember that? And so I think all of you here represent a group. You think that will be very important on the global scale. We cannot really view others as people who steal our jobs. We can think others as possibly our partners who can recreate this together. With that note, the U.S., as the wealthiest nation, has the moral obligation actually to lead the way, to recruit, continue to recruit on behalf of others. You know, when we look at the school facilities, we have so much more than others. If we are teaching something that others can learn with a pencil on a brick, we're criminal here. Thank you.
I just want to thank you. You've been so generous to UNC Asheville today, and we know that you will be in the lobby with some of your books and will greet others of us. For all of the events and for all of your conversation and for all of your strengths, thank you for coming to UNC Asheville.